Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor. And on this Ash Wednesday, as so many Catholics and Christians begin their Lenten journey, we wanted to focus on some grave concerns that many people have in this country with regard to the overreach of the FBI, specifically targeting Catholics practicing their faith. Joining us right now is Congressman Mike Johnson from the 4th Congressional District in Louisiana and also a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thanks for joining us on this.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is an issue of great concern to many millions of Americans. It should be a concern to everyone.
Yeah, it should. You don't have to be Catholic to be worried about the FBI investigating people for practicing their faith. And that's exactly what this is. Let's remind everyone the FBI had an internal memo suggesting that Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass could very well be domestic terrorists and racists and extremists, and they should be monitored. Your Judiciary Committee here, Congressman, you've actually sent a very strong letter to Director Wray suggesting that he come forward and explain himself. What could the explanation be for this?
Well, it's impossible to justify this. They have retracted this memo when we called attention to it, but this illustrates the problem. There's a pattern here. For more than a year, in the House Judiciary Committee, the Republicans have been sending letters, a long series of letters to FBI Director Wray, inquiring about these startling allegations that they are using federal law enforcement resources for apparent political purposes. And this is just the latest example in a long line of examples where they, as you said, have targeted a subset of Americans, traditional Catholics, and equating them with what they call domestic extremism, violent domestic extremists. And it's outrageous. And so we've asked the director to explain this. We think there has to be some serious accountability because this is a pattern that has to be stopped.
And is there any evidence, or have you asked for any evidence that this was acted upon? You mentioned that they've retracted this letter, but let's face it, they only retracted it because a whistleblower exposed it and we all learned about it. What else is going on there that we don't know about?
Well, we're gathering a lot of information. We've had dozens of whistleblowers within the FBI come forward to us. And as you know, we have set up a new select subcommittee of judiciary, the subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. And our Democrat colleagues balked at even the name of the committee, but there's no other way to describe this. This is the same kind of reckless reasoning, this political rationale. On its face, that's exactly what it appears to be. That caused the FBI in the last couple of years to target, for example, parents of concerned school children who just had the audacity to show up at their local school board meeting to protest and express their concern about mask mandates and school closures and curricula ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, this FBI has been really out of control, and the problem is with the leadership at the very top.
By the way, this is also at a time where Christopher Wray continues to come and testify before your committees and committees in the Senate and claim that he doesn't have any evidence that Antifa is a problem, that they're in any way an organized violent extremist group. I mean, how many fires need to be started in American cities by these same people dressed in the same way, using the same tactics to suggest that maybe Antifa should be a bigger thing on the radar of the FBI director than people going to say the Hail Mary in Latin?
That's exactly right. And this sounds like hyperbole. It sounds like we're making this up, but this is exactly what the records show. That they've shown a disdain for protected First Amendment activity. I mean, your most basic fundamental rights as an American, if you're conservative, you're being targeted for that, while at the same time they allow for actual violence and mayhem in the streets. When the Dobbs opinion was overturned, and the Dobbs opinion came out to overturn Roe v. Wade, and it was originally leaked, and the opinion came out. Remember, there was mayhem in the streets. They firebombed Catholic churches and pro-life centers and conservative organizations, Molotov cocktails, over 100 examples of that. The FBI and federal law enforcement did exactly nothing about that for more than a year. We had to pass a resolution on the House floor to call their attention to it, to get them to do something about it. It's a double standard, and the great risk here is that the American people are losing their faith in our institutions and our system of justice. That's a serious threat.
Listen, I think that it's incredibly encouraging that you and Chairman Jordan wrote this letter and demanded information from FBI Director Wray. But I got to tell you, I mean, at this point, it almost seems like it's to no avail because Christopher Wray consistently thumbs his nose at your committee and at congressional oversight. Has there been discussion yet, Congressman, about re-examining that allocation of billions of dollars for Christopher Wray's brand new FBI headquarters that he wanted for so many years? This was passed in this last minute lame duck session of Congress before the new Republican majority came in. Can you rescind that money? Say, listen, you want money for a new headquarters for the FBI, you better step forward and clean up that place before we spend this money.
That's a great question. Look, Congress has the power of the purse strings. We also have a very important constitutional responsibility of oversight. We have to make sure that these agencies that are designed to protect and serve the American people are not being used against them. We need serious reform at the FBI, and we've just begun, as I mentioned, this weaponization committee. It's styled after the Church Committee of the mid-'70s that was put together and commissioned because there were abuses in the intelligence apparatus of the country, and they brought about great reform. But they had about 120 different public hearings before they came forward with the recipe to correct it all. Hopefully, ours doesn't take that long. I think the evidence is glaring. We just begun that process. We had the first hearing about a week and a half ago. There are more scheduled. We're going to lay this bare for the American people, let everybody see it, and then we're going to bring forward meaningful reform ideas to get this thing under control. We have to do that, again, to restore the people's trust in our system itself.
What's interesting to me is if you look at the history of the Church Committee, this came after some of the extraordinary lengths that J. Edgar Hoover did, unabated for decades, including irresponsible and even illegal surveillance of people like Martin Luther King, let alone presidents. You had, for the most part, bipartisan agreement that this needs to get done. I don't feel like you've got that right now. Democrats seem to be just fine with the way this FBI has conducted itself.
It does appear that way. They tried to dismiss our weaponization committee from the very first hearing. They mocked the name of it. They said that we were doing this for political purposes. It's exactly the opposite of that. We're trying to depoliticize these institutions, the Department of Justice itself, so that we can restore the people's trust. There's no more important mission of Congress right now. We're in a hyper partisan, hyper politicized environment. It's a very toxic environment on Capitol Hill on most days. But we have to trudge through that and do our work because this is serious business. We're only 246 years into this grand experiment in self-governance. One of the foundational constructs of our republic is that the people believe that we really do have equal justice under law, that the Lady Justice has a blindfold on because there is just blind justice, equal justice. If we can't ensure that, we don't have much to stand on. And that's why this is so critically important as a top priority of ours in the House majority.
And I got to tell you, the visceral instinct for Republicans or conservatives looking at this would be to say, okay, fine. Then when we're in charge and we've got the Justice Department and we've got the White House, we'll use the FBI as a weapon against you. But that's not the solution here. The solution is to make it so something as powerful as the FBI or the Justice Department can never be used by either political party as a weapon. Can we get there?
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, one of the core principles of being a conservative is that we believe in the rule of law. As John Adams famously said, we're a nation of laws, not of men. No one is above the law. There's not two standards, one for the rich and powerful and one for everyone else. And if we're using the mechanisms of law enforcement for political purposes, we've lost that very critical element of what makes our country so great, so exceptional. And so we have to fight for that. And I think our party is the one who will stand for law and order, will stand for the rule of law, and we'll be saying that consistently. And we have to have our actions match our rhetoric. That's really, really important here.
Congressman Mike Johnson, the people of the Louisiana 4th are lucky to have you. And I got to say, impressive that you come on the day after Mardi Gras. I mean, you seem completely coherent. Thanks for joining us tonight. More to come on O'Connor Tonight.